Martin, go ahead.
Thanks, Latif. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Martin Mavenjana. I work here with the Kenya Human Rights Commission, where I serve as a Senior Program Advisor for Transitional Justice. And I'm happy to have joined the rest of you for this important conversation this evening. So just to dive in directly to your question, Latif, what vetting entails is ideally every 5 years after elections, the victor in the specific elections forms a government, and in forming this government, he or she nominates, would-be people who would actually serve in different portfolios in trying to implement their manifestos. So as we speak right now, though albeit in a little bit in kind of unique circumstances, because we all remember that after the 2022 elections, we did have a vetting. We did have the vetting of cabinet secretaries. But based on the last 5 or 6 weeks of peaceful demonstrations, we are now back to the drawing board where cabinet was dissolved, and we are now vetting new nominees for different portfolios. So what this entails is the president, nominating specific Kenyans to serve in different portfolios, and these people are actually supposed to be vetted by the speaker, by parliament. Usually it's a committee that is chaired by the speaker, his deputy, and the clerk, or the designate. So this process entails looking at the suitability of a specific candidate to serve in that specific docket. Now, in looking at that, you look at the academic credentials, you look at the past public service portfolios, you look at the aspects of integrity, and also whether they actually meet our constitutional threshold of leadership and integrity as laid out in Chapter 6. You'd also look at aspects of whether the respective nominees have got any criminal record or have a tainted past. So ideally, if you look at the way vetting should have been done as it was envisaged by the framers of our constitution, then it simply means that the standards should have been set exceptionally high, Latif and colleagues. But as your guess is probably as good as mine, what we have witnessed in the last couple of days is more or less of a rubber stamping process. I can't say without a shadow of doubt that there have been various petitions or memorandums that have been submitted by Kenyans, by civil society organizations, and by a whole lot of people, challenging the suitability of some of these of these people who are actually vetted by Parliament. But as your guess is as good as mine. Nobody the committee that was chaired by the speaker was not. They did not object to any of the prospective nominations, which is actually strange, because in any progressive democratic country where the standards are actually supposed to be high, like Kenya, and what is actually reflected within our constitutional dispensation, you would expect the people who elected to represent us to listen to the voices of Wanjiku. There are petitions, very weighty petitions, that were submitted against some of these nominees. But it's strange, Latif, that colleagues, that yes, Latif.
Martin, how do you know that there were weighty petitions? Did you see the petitions?
We actually submitted one as the Kenya Human Rights Commission, and even before we go to the aspect of the petitions being weighty, I'm certain some of you here may have seen the Gazette notice that was issued by President Ruto when he dissolved his cabinet, and the reasons for the dissolution of his cabinet border around 4 things. One, his then cabinet secretaries were unaccountable, they were inefficient, they failed in the aspect of public trust, and they basically failed to deliver on their mandate. In fact, when you read the Gazette notice, it clearly gives you a legal basis as to why the president is dissolving cabinet. So you can't dissolve cabinet with the same players today and then wake up a couple of weeks later and say that, oh, these fellows are actually suitable to serve. Remember, they serve in public office, and they are Chapter 6 of our Constitution lays clear parameters on what is expected of a public officer. So when the president chose in his wisdom that he should dissolve cabinet and, his cabinet in its entirety, it simply meant the whole lot should have gone home, right?
So what's the weight, Martin? Sorry if I can interject there. What is the weight of a Gazette notice coming from the office of the president? And if it gave these parameters, which you've reminded us of, how weighty is that? And is it something that you can just come back later and wave off that, like it doesn't really matter? Because some of the things that we speak about here are huge. We are talking about unaccountability, inefficiency, failure to deliver. But for some reason, the same individuals who may have been spoken of in this manner then are brought back. So how weighty would a Gazette notice coming from the office of the president be, really?
Thanks, Do. So the Gazette notice that was issued by the president was actually extremely weighty because the legal ramifications of the same simply mean that, put in plain terms, it simply means that those fellows were sacked for failure to perform. Now, if they were sacked for failure to perform, because it's within the president, you see, the president is the appointing authority, so the Constitution donates to him the power to form his government, and the same Constitution also lays down grounds on which a cabinet secretary can be relieved of his or her duties. So the president exercised his executive authority, and based on the advice that he could have got from his cocktail of advisors, he decided to dissolve parliament, and he decided to dissolve his cabinet. And he clearly stated the reasons why he was actually relieving these cabinet secretaries of their duties. And in doing so, he also alluded to the fact that he wanted to form, an inclusive government, one that is reflective of Kenya, one that would be, and if you read that Gazette notice clearly, he also alluded to having listened to the voices of Kenyans. And so if you look at all that, then by the stroke of a pen, the Gazette notice that he issued would actually relieve all these fellows of the duties, and it simply means that they, as public officers, actually failed the standards that are laid down under Chapter 6. Now, fast forward, you can't come back 2 or 3 weeks later and say some of the same fellows have actually been sanitized of this failure and actually been brought to serve in different portfolios, albeit just albeit being nominated to other dockets. Because when you look at how a public officer is defined within our Constitution, or even within the Interpretation Act, is somebody who actually holds who serves in a public office for and on behalf of the benefit of all Kenyans. So, to answer you, Ndu, that Gazette notice was actually quite weighty, and unfortunately, what we've just witnessed the past couple of days is actually a constitutional coup that has been aided and abetted by Parliament.
All right, thanks so much for that. At this point, I'm going to say welcome again to Kawibe Wambua, who is the Deputy Executive Director of Inuka Kenya, and just welcome your insights on that. Kawibe, karibu.
Thank you so much, Duoko and Eric, to this space, and thank you, and good evening to all Kenyans and other listeners present. I think this is an important topic for us to discuss. The reason why in late 2022, Parliament, I think it was one of the nominees now, the then nominated MP for ODM from Homa Bay, who was John Mbadi, who said that let us give the president his skunk. No, let's let him have his skunk, and that was even repeated during the course of his the course of his interview the other day in Parliament before the Committee of Parliament. And I would say first, as a first step, that this process is not supposed to be a joke. It's not supposed to be a PR exercise. It's not supposed to be a process where people posture in public as if they are doing it. It's supposed to be done. And in my view, apart from the constitutional provisions that are well outlined in Chapter 6 of the Constitution, there is the requirement that Parliament, the committee, actually delves into specifics of personal conduct, personal historical behavior in public spaces and otherwise. That, in my view, was clearly lacking. We were treated to a charade of people asking, what we may call pedestrian questions. We were treated to the people who were being interrogated, being assisted through questions, being basically told that you're doing very well, that will do, and stuff like that. So it was basically a charade. It was we were as Kenyans sitting and watching a performance. That's number one. Number two is therefore, because of that fact, we were not able to understand the character of the people being grilled by this committee, if we can call it grilling. So actually to people who do not know the particular nominees, that process did not add any value, if so to speak. The reason why I think Martin has stated that the Constitution, Article 75, Sub-Article 3, is very clear that people who have been dismissed from their jobs should not be reappointed. So the ones that have been reappointed, maybe we need to ask ourselves, why was it like almost mandatory for the president to reappoint them? Why did he feel with this cohort of advisors or with the deputy president that these ones must come back? What is it that they had done in the previous regime? If, for instance, we are talking about specifics, and you look at Professor Kindiki, a professor of law, who is coming back to the interior, in charge of the police and in charge of other administrative functions. And we are seeing, from when the protests began, sometimes in June until now, more than 60 people have been killed. There are many others who have disappeared, and others who are unidentified and lying in various morgues across the country. And nobody, not a single person, not a single officer has been prosecuted for that. We are seeing that the organs that are formed by the Constitution and other laws, like IPOA, the Kenya National Commission, and others, these institutions have been so defunded and so undermined that they are not able to execute their mandate as outlined in the law. We are seeing a situation where, and this the IPOA representative told us some time back, that the police are not even cooperating with an institution like that, so that Kenyans can get information of what is happening. And that same person who was in charge of that is brought back to become a nominee, and therefore to be vetted by Parliament. I mean,
so
it's.
However, if I just ask you then,
a joke.
At this point, so the
Yes.
president nominated the individual back to that, but then he forwarded the name to Parliament for vetting. what question should MPs have asked of Professor Kithure Kindiki, for instance? If you are in that panel, what question would you have asked him?
For example, what is it that he can say as a minister responsible for that docket about the death of the 60 people who legally have said? I know he was asked, and they said everybody takes responsibility, but there is something called command responsibility. He was in a position to ensure that those people who did those particular heinous acts have been arraigned before the law. He had the power. He didn't do anything. That's the point. That's what because that's a question that he would have asked. Okay. He was asked, and they said, people should take their own cross. But who is responsible for putting the cross or giving the cross to the people who are supposed to take their own crosses?
So on that account,
he is the owner of the wood.
On that account, MP Kawiva Wambua would have voted yes or no to Professor Kithure Kindiki.
Definitely, they would have. They would voted no to him being, to his suitability for that docket.
Okay.
In my view.
However, what do you, if you put yourself in the shoes of the president for a moment, it would appear as though, excuse me, it would appear as though he had to choose the individuals that he did. He had to. That he had a plethora of options in terms of folks he could bring into a new cabinet for nomination and vetting, but he still chose those that he did. What do you think are the reasons as to why he did this? The public outcry was very loud. The decibels were through the roof. And it was very clear, do not bring back these individuals. He himself was clear about what he was meant to do, however you choose to define meant, and yet he still chose to bring these individuals back. Why do you think he did?
And I think that is where, in my opinion, Parliament should, if starting with this committee, should have helped us in correcting the president. Because by being given a constitutional office, the president has a responsibility to obey the constitution and to ensure that its letter and spirit is what guides him in doing his work. When this does not happen, because the president can err, and now he has erred in this particular instance, Parliament, as a constitutional organ, as an arm of government, should have helped us as a country correct the president. And I see that is not happening. Why? The president is given the prerogative, the power in law to choose these people. So we can say, even if we give him a rope, we can say he could as well have brought them all back. He could have done that. If the president clearly does not have either an understanding or a respect for the rule of law or for the role of the constitution, the president could have done that. And we know the reason why Kenyans protested against this, the performance of his government, is because of exactly the same reason. So what the president is telling Kenyans is, well, I'm going to reappoint them. What can you do? And we are saying Parliament must be able to do something about it, to help Kenyans do something about it. And if they are not able to, then it means then both Parliament and President are being rogue. The reason why there is separation of powers between the various organs of the government is for each organ to keep the other one in check. So when the president makes a mistake and Parliament is not able to help us resolve that mistake, then it definitely means then that we are on our own as Kenyans.
I want to bring in Wabala here, Brian Wabala from Transparency International as well. If you were to give a marking scheme, if you were to, because tonight what we are saying is this is the people's verdict, we'd like citizens to then also give their verdict on each of these nominees. We are running a poll on X, we are running a poll on all these live streams on YouTube and Facebook as well, and saying, just say, how do you rate each of these nominees and their performance before this panel? What would the marking scheme look like? Brian? I mean, what should we consider? Should we consider how they were dressed? Should we consider how eloquently and well spoken they were? Should we consider how much camaraderie they were able to generate with their interviewers? What should we be looking out for? What is it that should make someone say, I think so and so deserves a slot in the cabinet? Brian.
Thank you very much, Eric. It's really indeed a laughing matter. I should say this, that the vetting, let me respond to the question and by extension an answer to that question. What entails the vetting, what vetting entails, Eric, is that once the president has nominated his nominees and sent the names to Parliament, the exercise, the entire exercise is governed under the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act, which prescribes 3 important criteria for consideration by the committee. This is the professional training, experience, and personal integrity of these nominees. I dare say that this entire exercise was a lip-glossing exercise. Previous speakers have mentioned that we also, the entire exercise seemingly looking like a charade, yeah, ticking some boxes. I wish to say this, that I didn't sit to watch through all the interviews, but I think I watched about 4 of them, and I will talk about 2. When I was watching Mbadi's interview, I saw the speaker barely aiding, supporting him to answer questions, yeah, to a point where the nominee had to shut up and wait for the speaker to complete certain statements on his behalf. Yeah, I was equally shocked to see that the nominee for education was not asked very important questions as to how he'll provide direction and governance on that ministry. He was not asked what he thinks about the issue that is bedeviling the education sector and what difference he will bring. Very important question to have been asked. He was not asked. But all is not lost, Eric. I want to believe that with this conversation, that the committee, because it still have a chance, looking at the process that has been stipulated under the law, looking at the process, we hope that this committee, and I don't know probably this just a wishful thinking, because we already can tell what might come out of this process. But this is what I'm hoping, that this committee in its report, when it finally writes its report and submits to Parliament, to the plenary, it will refuse to recommend certain names to be considered for appointment as cabinet secretaries. My colleagues have mentioned at length about the law relating the CS. Once they have been dismissed, they cannot come back to occupy any state offices as provided under Chapter 6, particularly Article 73. It even makes it worse even for the Attorney General. Yeah. For cabinet CSS, we might engage in an academic exercise and say, but probably since the president did not cite any particular reasons, and probably they can come back. But for someone like the Attorney General, the president quoted Section 12 of the Attorney General's, or the Office of the Attorney General's Act, which provides for various grounds upon which the Attorney General can be removed from office, without specifically relying on any ground to remove him from office. So this can be taken that the Attorney General was removed from office under all the grounds, including incompetence, an inability to deliver, corruption, and mismanagement of his office. So how can this same individual be proposed to occupy a state office?
If I was
My
to,
rating
I mean,
for these
yeah.
for these interviews, out of 10, I'll give it 12. I give it 2.
Okay, so you've given a dismal 2 out of 10. If I were to
Yes.
ask you some of the questions, perhaps, Brian, that would elicit the kind of responses that people essentially were looking for, what would that be? If you were to do a snapshot, let's take education because you mentioned it. Let's take the Attorney General. Let's take even health. What would be some questions that you would ask or that should be asked that would have elicited the response that would have convinced public or even parliament one way or another that these were actually the people that should sit in those positions?
The anti-finance bill protests, of the 3 criteria that I've mentioned, the public is more concerned about personal integrity more than academic excellence. People are concerned as to whether these individuals are being fronted to power, whether they will be able to utilize state resources in a manner that is prescribed under the law. Of importance to me, if I had an opportunity to sit in that committee, most of my questions will revolve around integrity questions to all these individuals. For example, the former governor of Kakamega. This is an individual that has so many cases that are pending in court. In fact, in a very suspicious way, on Friday last week, the Director of Public Prosecution decided to drop his case, the case against him, that the office itself had decided to open a case against sometime last year in December. They decided to drop the cases. So this man, he appears in Parliament when his integrity is still being yet to be cleared by an state office that is mandated to clear. My questions will center mainly on the question of integrity and experience to do the work.
But then, Brian,
Yes.
I think there's case law and there's practice that has already set that bar for integrity, right? In the Mumo Matemu case and the others, where
Yes.
until and unless somebody has exhausted all avenues of appeal, then you cannot really bar them from holding public office or state office.
Eric, can I jump in a bit?
Go
Eric?
ahead. Start, Brian, and then Dr. Amboy will come in.
All right.
Okay.
Eric, the question about integrity, Eric, this question, I agree that again we cannot purport to accuse individuals unfairly. Also, because I understand that in law there's principle that until you are guilty, you're innocent. But the question of integrity, Eric, is that, in fact, for this particular case that I'm talking about, this individual, it's not that he has exhausted. He has active cases in court. In fact, I would say this, that Eric, the former governor dared to lie on oath. He dared to lie on oath that, to the effect that and I'll avoid to make certain statements because again, I don't want to risk being accused of having already made a ruling when courts have not pronounced themselves on the same. But I would say that, Eric, for as long as your integrity has been called to question, or he's been called out, until that point, you clear yourself completely from the case. Can you say that
Okay, Brian, are you basing your argument on moral
can you hear me?
side? I can hear you. Are you basing
Yes.
your argument on morality, Brian? Because
Absolutely.
even you are finding it hard to put on some words, lest you get into a foul with the law. So is it about morality? And if it's about morality, so what are the standards of morality? Are we going to say that it's morality to the point of if your conscience tells you that you've done something wrong, you step aside or you don't take up an appointment? Which conversely also means that if your conscience tells you that you're okay, you take up an appointment? Or are we taking up any sort of like a level and a bar and saying, for as long as you've been mentioned in something, then you should not get into public service? And that is the case that went to court. Brian?
Eric,
Brian?
can you hear me? Yes. So this question, it's a moral question, and I agree with you on that, to the effect that if you're not, and I think we'll always find, and this is one of the challenges that the law around this issue always finds it. We always find it difficult to get such individuals out of power, because they will always rely on the fact that for as long as they have not been successfully accused, adjudged to have engaged in a corrupt conduct, then they can be allowed to serve in a public office. However, out of morality, the question of morality, it follows that if you've been adversely mentioned to have engaged in a misconduct, then it follows that the law applies to you to the extent that and I think let me on this, although it was a tribunal case that was against that case against Nancy Baraza, I think the standard that we should apply should be that was applied in the tribunal, where the question of morality had more preeminence in determining whether an individual can hold a public office. I think
it's interesting that you say that, Brian. And maybe at this point, if we can look at the law a little bit here, and maybe at that point Martin can jump in, because the question here is that in terms of practice, what we've seen happening in Kenya over the last 10, 20 years is that have we seen instances or situations where individuals have stepped aside from public office by virtue of the fact that they've been called out, whether they've appeared in court, charged or otherwise? Has the practice been that individuals will decline to accept a position based on the fact that their names have been adversely mentioned, or that there's been a question about whether their integrity standard has been up to scratch? So there's that in terms of the question of practice. But in terms of what the law says, should you vacate office, should you decline to accept a position if there is a question about your personal integrity? And then what the law says as far as all of this is concerned, where would we be, Martin?
Thanks, Ndo. So just to get back to the question that was raised by Latif and also your question, when you look at articles, first and foremost, I must mention that we have a very progressive constitution that sets extremely high standards when it comes to integrity. When you look at the provisions enshrined under Article 73 of the Constitution, that is under Chapter 6 on leadership and integrity, it says that authority assigned to a state officer is, one, is a public trust to be exercised in a manner that is consistent with the Constitution. 2, demonstrates respect for the people. 3, brings honor to the nation and dignity to the office. And 4, promotes public confidence. So that's just, a snapshot of what Article 73, paragraph 1A, 1A to 4 provides for. So when you look at some of the nominees, especially Mheshimiwa Oparanya, his conduct as governor does not inspire confidence in very many Kenyans. There were several submissions that have been made by members of the public, by civil society organizations, opposing his nomination, together with a host of other nominations. But like I earlier submitted, your guess is as good as mine. Parliament seems to have abdicated its duty to actually properly vet these people. And if by extension I can try to answer both your question and Eric's question, when you look at the history of public office, those who have served in different capacities in public offices, I think it was during President Uhuru Kenyatta's regime whereby he asked a few CSs to step aside, but they did not do it on their own frolic. In fact, if you look at many of our past people who have served in different capacities, they usually do not do it on their own frolic. It actually has to be, an instruction coming from your superior, who by that time is the president, asking you to step aside, such that investigations can be an investigation can be undertaken based on your conduct. But on the flip side, the other, I think also the other point that I think is a huge conversation colleagues and Eric can do is the fact that, one, Parliament is abdicating its duty to actually properly vet these people. Secondly, EACC seems to also be abdicating its duty to effectively investigate some of these fellows, because on one instance, you say somebody has a case to answer, there's plausible evidence, and then before you know it, then they exercise, there are reservations that we cannot pursue with these investigations. Now, the entity in Kenya that has perfected the art of actually abdicating its duty and actually abusing a specific statutory provision called nolle prosecute means you're no longer interested in prosecuting, is the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. When you look at the history of how that power has been abused, it dates back right from the post-election of 2007-2008, where we had over 4,000 cases being dropped, and the argument they raised at that point in time by then Director of Public Prosecution, Dr. Toriako Kobiko, was that those cases did not meet prosecutorial threshold. So fast forward, if you look at that specific office, year in, year out, you've seen the high profile cases that are dropped, and that is the liner that is usually being used. So by extension, when you look at EACC and other investigative offices that are actually supposed to help us actually ensure that we have credible people serving in us as a nation, they have actually borrowed from the same script, whereby at one point in time you're investigating somebody, you've called him to answer summons, then at the next point in time you're saying, we no longer want to interested in pursuing this case. In fact, when you come to EACC, I think earlier this year, if you all remember, there was an out-of-court settlement that EACC negotiated, I think, with then Migori Governor Obado. Now, that, Eric and Do, is a classic case of abdicating your duties. When you read the law, it says that if you have actually, if you have actually been accused and the evidence before you is weighty that you actually have stolen an amount of close to 2 billion, then you have to refund a substantial sum. Now, what happened in I think Governor Obado's case is that he actually reached a strange settlement with the EACC, whereby he was requested to pay about 229 million. Now, the allegations before us as a nation was that he actually embezzled 2 billion, right? And that is actually something that was reported in the court of it's actually there on the court of public opinion. So you can imagine that is actually a classic case of where you have an entity, EACC, actually abdicating its duty to hold people to account. So the question that we all should be asking Kenyans is, Do we need an overhaul of ESCC? Because it seems the officials, they're actually abdicating their legal their duties to actually effectively investigate some of these public officers that were nominated. The other thing that I may point out, Eric, and if I may, what was rather interesting in this vetting exercise is you might have noticed that many of those prospective nominees who were brought back to serve seem to have made a substantial amount of money in 20 months. In fact, what is interesting from a business point of view is that we do have corporate companies that we know actually made a couple of losses over the last 20 months. But it seems, being a CS in this regime, and we all know it's public knowledge what CS actually, what the salary of a CS is, what the allowances are. So when you look at the explanations that they were giving as to how their net worth increased, for instance, I remember the CS nominee for Interior said, his net worth increased by 150 million, and that was the same script by almost all those who had served. So it begs the question of integrity. You're a public officer. Have they been actually declaring, making wealth declaration forms as is required by law? Because that is where the cracks are, Eric. I mean, if you're a public officer and we know your salary, there is no way you make a profit of this magnitude.
All right. So thank you very much, Martin. Everybody who's joined us as we continue this conversation, it's the people's verdict. The members of parliament, the committee of parliament has finished vetting and interviewing the 20 nominees so far to cabinet positions. And what we are doing tonight as citizens is now passing our verdict after seeing how they performed, after seeing how the parliamentary committee itself performed. So we want to hear, what do you make of that, and what do you say? There are several comments. Let me sample some of them. Victor says, I reject the whole cabinet. The vetting process was a charade. I do not think any of these nominees is up to the task to reset Kenya. Calvin saying the vetting process for the cabinet secretary positions was ultimately ineffective. Vetting an individual with known integrity issues such as Oparanya undermines the credibility of the process. Mama says, my verdict is that we are at a critical juncture in our nation. Appointing cabinet secretaries is not a priority. Ruto has spit on our faces with his nominees, and ODM has betrayed its followers by nominating its members. The whole vetting process has been a complete sham. More comments. Yegon says, Professor Kithure Kindiki has done over 90% good to Kenyans. He is amongst the ministers who've delivered. The Gen Z demos cannot overshadow the good side of Professor Kithure Kindiki. Kalwa says the whole process was a sham. No member of the committee questioned how these nominees acquired their wealth. Mercy, we start off on integrity matters on each of them. Okay, if they have ever been mentioned in any scandal as suspects under Chapter 6, that's where the axing should begin. The second criteria is their expertise on the sector. Check their performance as per earlier positions. We want to open up the phone lines, not the phone lines rather, but the mic. So raise your hand, request to be given a mic so that we can then give you the mic and you can speak and tell us what your verdict is. And we want to limit this because we want as many people as possible to contribute tonight. So when you give the mic, take a maximum of 2 minutes and we'll be counting. We'll just cut you off. But okay, we'll do so. We'll try as much as possible to be as polite as possible.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Some more?
Okay, just looking at some more of these comments in terms of what folks are saying this evening, that no question or justification was given, or rather requested, for the declaration of wealth, and that's something that should have been brought up. I just want to know what legal recourse we have, especially for reappointment of SAC CSs. The whole cabinet is just a mockery to the people of the Republic of Kenya. I mean, is it a must for someone like, you mentioned, to be appointed to the cabinet? That's a joke by the president. Out here, there are so many Kenyans who are overqualified and are unemployed. Question should be asked of each of them. Number one, the conflict of interest is that a CS or his kin proxies to be allowed to do business with government, tax returns vis-a-vis income reported. Why, when they're billionaires looking for, when they're the question, the term here is a gazillion other Kenyans looking for jobs that pay them 12 million a year. So those are some more of the comments through there.
Okay, so we want to pick up some of those that have requested to speak, and I'm looking out for ladies who are requesting to speak, so we can give you an opportunity. We've been hearing a lot of gentlemen this evening, and just apart from Undu, everybody else has just been a dude. So Juliet, you have the mic first, and after Juliet, then we'll pick on Tribeless. Tribeless is at Joho Hassan 1, the chief hustler, political strategist, and top human rights activist. It's not the other Joho.
Okay,
Okay.
just making sure.
Juliet, go ahead. You have the mic. Juliet, go ahead. Okay, Juliet doesn't speak. So let's add somebody else. Yeah, go ahead, Tribeless.
Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you so much, Spice FM and KHRC and every other speaker. So mine will be very brief. Number one, I wanted to comment on the question that you asked about what question did you expect? I think one of the co-hosts asked, what question would we expect to be asked the nominees so that we can be satisfied with the process? I first want to take you back and ask this important question. Did we have to nominate someone who has been mentioned with the EACC as being investigated? That is where we should start from. We have over 47 million Kenyans. I guess there are over 5 or 10 million or 1 million at least who have same qualifications as Wycliff and better Oparanya. Why didn't the president not pick someone else? Because the president knows very well, he knew this case was ongoing with EACC. So he had the opportunity to pick someone else. By him picking on Wycliff and better Oparanya and having these institutions, seeing that Oparanya was arrested the other day, that one in itself tells us how the president doesn't care about issues of integrity. Number two, did we have to nominate Joho? I don't blame ODM for coming into government. I mean, if a dog is hungry and you throw a piece of meat to a dog, what do you expect? The dog will go for it. It's up to the president. We elected Honorable William Samoei Ruto. He is the one who should select the right candidates, do a due diligence. Yes, intelligence. Yes, all this assassin institutions who can vet and tell him that this guy is this is this. So I find it very odd that we are asking if two coming to how the nomination happened, Mr. Eric.
I want us to get straight into an issue here. It's a people's verdict, so it's a vote. Is there any of the nominees who impressed you?
Thank you so much. So the nominees who impressed me, I want to be honest with you, was John Mbadi. He was very articulate. He understood this job, and even the way he was answering questions on PFMA and PPM, I was satisfied he's going to do a good job. I have no issue with Professor Kindiki as well, because although he came back, but to be honest, he did a good job. Professor Abraham did a good job. I also have no issue with Rebecca Miano. So I think around three or four impressed me so well with how they have worked. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. S, you have the mic next. S at Quira Doughty.
Hi, Eric. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Thank you very much for giving me the chance to speak. I think for me, the person who really impressed me, and I didn't really expect him to really impress me, was John Bundy or Mbadi. Yes, he was very articulate. He answered the questions correctly. Like he knew what the role and the CS position was for. The rest, I think they were just there to just waste our time. But Eric, I think also I'd like to to request you the next time you have an opportunity to speak with the president, can you ask him why can't they reduce their salaries? If they're asking us Kenyans to tighten our belts, why are they not tightening their belts themselves? Why can they take pay cuts, right? If they're not able to deliver service to the Kenyans, they resign. Why do they want to squeeze our belts and not squeeze their belts? They keep on increasing salaries. They have, like, why do MPs have sitting allowances? Make that make sense, right? If we are all squeezing
Okay.
our belt, let them also squeeze their belt. Thank you.
Let it apply equitably and equally to all. Thank you very much. As Juliet, are you ready to speak to us now? As give us your vote. You had requested to speak. Juliet, go ahead if you're there. She's not. Diana.
Thank you very much, Eric and HRC. Me, John Mbadi, I wish him the very best, but I hope that ODM will resign as the minority party and accept that they are in now in government, so that we know who is the minority team. I have trouble with anyone. I know people are commending certain cabinet secretary, because we must keep wondering what is wrong with the president. How do you dismiss people, a whole cabinet, say you have evaluated their performance, then just a few days after you gazette a whole notice, you come and reappoint and renominate half of them? At that point, where is the problem? At that level, where is the problem? Because clearly some of these CSs had their credentials. Was there a full evaluation? Was it an emotional dismissal? I think the president owes Kenyans first an explanation for playing with our mind. And remember, especially as per Article 153 of the Constitution, cabinet secretaries are individually and collectively answerable to the president. So this is where you have your supervisor, you have your boss. So when they dismiss you, we all assume that that person engaged the due process, engaged their mind. And if you recall, even before that, there was a cabinet meeting that looked like the Last Supper. So that must have been the evaluation. And he didn't fire everybody. He retained the cabinet secretary for foreign affairs, Musalia Mudavadi. So for sure, must be reasons why he retained Musalia Mudavadi. He evaluated and decided this one, I think that he has done a few good things. Then to subject us to waste our time and resources by reappointing those very, very people, I think is missing the constitutional moment where Kenyans are demanding that we now must have ethical standards. And it's also very bad that everybody had to wait. Even the Attorney General, who had security of tenure, had to allow himself to be dismissed, then come back as a cabinet secretary. I think the political phone game that we keep seeing in the process of this particular cabinet nomination all the way to the vetting process. These people have 28 days according to the law for the vetting process. They had all the time to make sure that one, the parliament has the resources to address the legality of the list that is provided. We never see them interrogating this. The women's movement wrote to the speaker and asked that first, the list should not be considered, because that's what the court has ruled, that any appointment of cabinet or chief executive members at county level that does not meet the not more than 2/3 gender rule shouldn't be considered. But say for this last minute where he has even come close to 32, not yet 34%, all along the list was non-compliant, yet these people hurriedly composed a vetting committee to go around that.
Diana, let
The
me jump
days
in and
for
ask you a question
submission.
on this. Diana, I want to ask you something at the risk of going over a lot of time, but I think it's important that I'm going back to why do you think the president, taking into consideration all of the things that you've mentioned, whether it is the gender issue, whether it is the integrity issue, whether it is the constitutional issue when we talk about the Gazette notice, why would an individual who heard all of this and is very and would be sensitive to public outcry still go ahead and make the same decision on some individuals? Why would somebody do that from your point of view?
I would say it means he owes a certain fidelity to that political class as opposed to the Kenyan people, which is extremely wrong. I don't know what political debts are owed, but to the level where this country, millions of people expressed displeasure, and there was a sigh of relief when he dismissed cabinet. I think thereafter, in addition to declaring the public debt, it would be nice to know what these people are owed, because partly it is also embarrassing to the presidency that you can fire people very, very publicly, and then thereafter you come swallow and say, again, they were competent. You know, we question so much. We question your capacity at all levels. We question your capacity at all levels. So ni kama, I don't know what power they have over him, but it is extremely scary because this is what state and political capture looks like. Especially when you think about the people who've come back. I don't know what stakes they have in this government, but definitely they are not good stakes for this country.
Diana, thank you very much. Other speakers that are lined up, Mombasa's finest, you go first, and then Brian Osoro, you come in next. Remember, 1.5 minutes each. Mombasa's finest, go first.
Good evening, all. Thank you for the time you've given me. Okay, one thing troubles me so much, and I always tend to ask myself, okay, if the question of CS had to be had to have a political answer, then why couldn't the president even give chance to the young people? We young people, I think from the bracket of 30 to 45 years, I don't think going forward, the older generation has answers for us. And I don't think we should, the government should always tend to believe and think that the older generation is the only one that can give answers to us. Seriously, Oparanya cannot give tangible answers to what is ailing our young generation, because when we come to the age whereby they need to start reaping, Oparanya will not be there. He won't be there. And I think there are young people in the government, even now, there are young people in the government who could easily be given those positions and they could deliver. Okay, they could not deliver as much as we need, but they at least have tangible solutions to the generation that is coming.
Mombasa's finest, is there any of the 20?
Yes.
Is there any of the 20 candidates who you say yes to?
Out of the 20 candidates,
sounds like there's none.
There's none.
Okay.
There's none.
Sure. Okay.
There's none.
Brian Osoro, next.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I would say my verdict on the CSs that were just vetted by the parliament. I mean, I don't know. It's going to sound very disparaging, but I think Kenya is a joke. You see, some of us, we prepare for interviews. What we saw there was, I don't even think anyone would have needed any preparation. The questions were just lackluster. These are not questions that are fitting of people getting roles as serious as being a cabinet secretary. But then again, I feel like we might be missing the point because we understand we have a very hands-on president who likes to do what he thinks is right. So sometimes I feel even the CSs, yes, they are just the face, but in reality, I don't think their presence there would even matter. Because and it's even interesting that I hear people here saying that people like Mbadi, because of how articulate he was on some of the questions that he was being asked, I feel like partly there's some political play there. I feel like ODM is going to be blamed for things that they even in the first place they will never have solutions to because a person like Mbadi coming in, so apparently he's the one that is going to solve this economic situation that Kenya has. I mean, I feel like whatever has been happening is an indictment to us as Kenyans, and then also what we consider as our leadership. I feel like.
So, Member Osoro, what's your vote?
Yes. None. There's nothing.
None of
like
them.
I mean,
None of them passes.
Yes.
Thank you.
There's
Thank you,
nothing.
Brian. Let's bring in a couple of more speakers. Victor, you'll go first, and then Abdi, you come in. And just because we want this to be the people's verdict and we want to hear what the people say about each of their nominees, when you come in, start by telling us whether there's any that you say yes to, whether there's any that you say no to, and then you give us your brief comment. So, Victor, you go first. Let's hear from you.
Yes, thanks, Eric. And can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. So I watched some of the interviews or vetting, as if you want to call it that, but none of them really impressed me. I mean, I could say, okay, maybe Mbadi did something, but the only reason why Mbadi looks like he did something was because the rest were awful. Like none of them has an idea how to reset Kenya. And for me personally, even if they don't have integrity, some of them don't have integrity issues. My benchmark is track record. A lot of these people have been in public service for such a long time, but what is it that we can pinpoint and say that Duale has done this, Mbadi has done this, Oparanya has done this? There's nothing. You cannot point anything to them. Some of them are worth millions of shillings, some of them even billions. I'm wondering, if you're worth that amount of money, I should be seeing a company or an organization with your name out there that is actually making a difference in the economy of Kenya. And that is what you see in many countries abroad, or in the Western world, or in some of the countries that we like copying, like Singapore. If someone is wealthy, you can tell that, oh, they run this company, they run that company, this is the amount it contributes to the economy of the country, or this is the amount of taxes that they pay. None of them demonstrated that. I mean, in a year or in 2 years, somebody has made more than 150 million, and then they tell us that, oh, those were pending payments from some legal whatever that they are done. And I'm like, if you can make that in the private sector, why don't you stay in the private sector and build up the private sector so that you can create more jobs and rebuild this economy? You have no business being in the public sector.
Victor, it's because of public service. Okay?
No.
It's because you want to
can
come and
serve
serve
the
the public.
You can serve the public also privately. Yeah, Manu Chandari has served the public privately all this time. He has never been interested in being in being in a government position. And then secondly, the vetting process.
Victor.
Yes, if I just finish on this.
Okay.
Yeah, where they were asking them, like, how much has your net worth increased? I mean, it was a joke. Yeah, it didn't even. Let me just leave it at that. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you very much. Okay, so next we have Abdi. Abdi, let's hear from you. first of all, begin by telling us, is there any that gets your yes vote, who gets your no vote, and then why?
Thank you, Eric, for hosting this space. I'm joining you from Toronto in the diaspora. I'm not voting or endorsing any of the nominees. It is perplexing to seek public service roles while holding such significant amount of money. Their motivation seems unquestionable. Questionable, I mean. And I believe public service should be driven by a genuine commitment to serve the people. Nobody asked the nominees why they want to serve the public. I think the political class has united against the people to consolidate power. This vetting process appears a mere PR exercise. Even the arrogance of some of the nominees were palpable. It's all about the hustler, millionaire, billionaire club. Nobody's task is to the task. It's all about coalition building. There are nominees who served 2 terms governors, yet still we face the same challenges we had before devolution. Some nominees have integrated these issues. Others have failed the president and were fired for competency issues. What miracle solution are we expecting from these people to solve for the Kenyan people? I endorse none of these people. Since we gained independence, Eric, in 1963, we never truly built a nation. We remain trapped in a never-ending vicious cycle like this, unable to make real change. The system was designed not to work, and it was never worked for you and me. It works for the elite and their colonial masters. For decades, we have witnessed the same pattern: the political elites focused against institutions, failing to uphold the rule of law, society divided on tribal lines. The very structure we meant to support and grow development have instead stifled our political keeping of us achieving true nationhood. Our trouble does not stem from electing the corrupt leaders, but consistently choosing those who mismanage our resources. We need to look ourselves on the mirror. We cheer corruption, we cheer tribalism, and these people never bring food to the table. We missed the purpose of the vetting. The primary goal of the vetting was official to verify the accuracy of their financial declaration and ensure their wealth has been legally acquired. Parliament had responsibility to investigate and scrutinize such significant financial growth, particularly in the current economic stagnation. So nobody asked the origin of their wealth, no tax returns were provided, no valuation report was filled, no audited financial statement were ever produced. Everyone was quoting a figure and room for corruption, no one verified. So I will say that we need a vetting process, need a stringent guidelines and rules. The political clients have united to consolidate power, making the vetting process appear more as a public relation exercise, as I say. And this is where the problem is. Parliament, which should act on behalf of the people, appears incapable or unwilling to perform its crucial role, leading to significant erosion in trust in public institutions. With the president seemingly capturing the other arms of government, recalling MPs and holding new elections might be an effective solution because our institutions have failed.
Thank
So
you
what
very
I
much
will
for your
say
comments,
is,
Abdi. I guess we'll take some more comments as we go ahead, but let's hear some of the comments that are coming in on the live chat. The whole cabinet is just a mockery of the people of the Republic of Kenya, says Richie. I mean, is it a must for someone to come back into cabinet? Bangladesh says, my verdict is that we are at a critical juncture in our nation. Appointing cabinet secretaries is not our priority. Ruto has spit on our faces with his nominees, and ODM has betrayed its followers by nominating its members. The whole vetting process has been a complete sham. Carl Calvin says the vetting process for the cabinet secretary positions was ultimately ineffective. Vetting an individual with known integrity issues, such as you mentioned, the former governor of Kakamega, undermines the credibility of the process. It is apparent that the report will likely deviate significantly from the truth. The integrity of the entire vetting procedure has been compromised by the speaker. Ed Gitonga says, when the chair of the vetting is himself of questionable character with previous credible allegations of corruption, the entire process is nothing but a sham. Anthony Muindi says, the simple fact that not a single one was asked to justify their wealth is a flawed point. Such rules should, of innocence till proven guilty, should be waived for such individuals and be barred from holding public offices, Grimba. If indeed it is confirmed that there was loss of public funds under his watch, like it's the case now, until such a case is cleared. I mean, there are quite a number here as we keep going on. A lot of comments coming in, and we can continue to back them to take more comments.
Yeah. So as we're taking more comments, we'd like to ask if you'd like to speak. Abdi, please mute your mic.
Yeah,
Abdi,
I
please
just
mute your mic.
summarize a little bit, Eric. I'll say that that's true what all the people say. I think my solution is disbanding the current parliament and the executive branch and holding new elections, build the trust and integrity of our governance structure and to the fidelity to the rule of law. I think as a citizen, we have passed a vote of no confidence to these institutions. Thank you.
Abdi says, bring the whole thing down.
Yeah, let's all go. Let them all go home.
This country should be closed. Let everybody go home. So, request, and we are looking for more ladies to contribute as well. The ladies who are here and would like to contribute, please come in. So, Ndu, the conversation here and the way we're hearing it is that there is a lot of concern on the process. So, there are many people who are saying, okay, it really for me, it doesn't matter how the people performed, is that it's how the entire process, how did we get there? Why did the president have to nominate the people that he nominated? Did Parliament have to start this nomination process as well from the very beginning? Did it have to happen? Could Parliament have said, we are looking at this and we have to seek legality on several of these matters? Should public participation have happened a bit better? And so on and so forth, particularly the issue of public participation.
Well, I think, look, it's valid in terms of that point, and you're going to hear it coming up a lot more. Look around the world, Eric, that even in Kenya, I believe in 2017, an entire presidential election was cancelled, not on anything else, but on procedure. That they were not disputing whether the winner of the election was actually the winner. But the dispute that came from the Supreme Court's judgment or the Supreme Court resolution that in this process of getting from point A to point B, there was a flaw. And because there was a flaw, we cannot give this process its integrity, and because of that, we must go back to the ballot. If a procedural issue comes into play at any point, then one must ask the question, then was the entire process, up to scratch from the get-go? And if you want to ask yourself, did public participation take place? Which, remember, is a tenet of the Constitution. It is constitutionally mandated that public participation must take place. Was it enough? Was 2 days enough for the entire country to say, actually, yes, we are okay with the 8 returnee CSs, 10 returnee CSs, that the entire country say that we're okay with that? Public participation is one of the things that was put in the 2010 Constitution. And
how should it have happened?
Well, I mean, how does it happen? We know that for a lot of cases, what many folks would say is that there's a tick box exercise that happens when it comes to public participation. How a baraza is held, that here is a list of people, and it's very much what we're doing tonight. Is there a yes-no kind of scenario that you can present to people? Because you have a list of people who have been very public for the last 2 years. Can they be made to, can they be presented to people once again and say, should they come back or not? And I think the simplicity of things sometimes scares people. That something very simple could actually have happened and you would have gotten the get-go of Kenyans. But you didn't, because it would appear as though there was an assumption that you could do what you wanted and everything is all right. And I think that is the attitude that scares off a lot of Kenyans, and not scared of in terms of fear, but scared of, we don't want to touch this process anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't have that kind of authenticity. It doesn't feel that you belong there.
Exactly.
Okay, more votes coming in. We'd like to open up the mics as well. So start by telling us if there's any of the nominees that impressed you, there's any that did not impress you, or maybe it's the entire process that did not impress you. So where is your vote? You've got to vote. You're either voting yes to some nominees, no to some nominees, or yes or no to the entire process altogether. Manua, you speak first, and then we hear from Samora, and then lastly we'll be here from Web 3.0. Manua, go. Manua, we can't hear you. Okay, let's try Samora.
Good evening, Eric. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, first of all, none of them impressed me. And my justification is that I think, in my opinion, the president himself is incompetent, and Kenyans expecting an incompetent person to nominate competent people is a joke on us. I hear people praising Mbadi, and from my professional background as an accountant, there is no amount of abracadabra that Mbadi will do to change the economy of this country. If we do not go back and get the money that was stolen, the trillions of shillings that was stolen in the last regime, if we don't help people to account for the monies that were lost in the last regime, there is absolutely no magic that John Mbadi will do to turn around the economy of this country. In fact, I foresee Mbadi being one of the worst ministers of finance in this country because he put across so much theory with very little substance attached to it. In terms of the parliamentary vetting exercise, I am extremely disappointed. I literally watched almost all of those vetting or interviews, so to speak. It was very disappointing that the members of parliament who were seated there were asking very shallow questions to people who are supposed to be making policies that drive the economy of Kenya, people who are supposed to be making policies that turn around the livelihoods of people of Kenya. It is extremely hurting that one of the most important and direct questions they could have asked is how someone is able to make 150 million shillings in 2 years when the economy is literally shutting down, companies are closing, but the members of parliament were there basically just to make ends meet for themselves and get their allowances. So in a nutshell, we are going to have one of the most dysfunctional executives ever, because the
Thank you,
people
Samora.
joining from ODM are going to be very loyal to Raila Odinga, and it's going to be very dysfunctional. So let us prepare for that. But I think going forward, we, the voters, need to be much better in terms of choosing the people we send to parliament. Thank you. Over.
Thank you. Web 3.0, and then we hear from Dr. Onyango. And what we'd like, actually, before Dr. Onyango, you come in, I want to continue mixing with genders. From Web 3.0, we go to January Rimo, and then we come to Dr. Onyango. You start with your vote. Are you voting yes to anyone, no to anyone, yes to the process, no to the process? And then let's hear from you. Go ahead, Web.
I'm voting no to the process. I think, Kenyans rejected the entire cabinet, and what Kenyans were looking for is an overhaul and bringing in people who can help the president reset the tone of the nation and the rhythm of the nation. I think the problems that we are going to face going forward are not going to be easy to tackle. He's alluded to the fact that you increase borrowing outside, to plug the gaps. So that I think will continue to be a problem, and that debt will be multi-generational debt. The other thing is, I think this is to just the general movement that we have for change in Kenya. I think we are underrating the kind of strategic genius Ruto is. So we are not dealing. I hear a lot of people trying to, because of anger, trying to insult him as if he's an idiot. He's a person who is playing 4D chess while we are playing 3D chess. And that's an entire topic, but this guy has an entire, think tank right now, working to counter whatever we think we can throw out. So he did not do this by mistake. It's a middle finger to the people of Kenya, and right now he's testing the waters if he can use the kind of playbook that seems like from the outside, if you audit his thinking and how he does things, public appearances, private suppression, and at the same time denying the same. He's using the Putin playbook. If you look at how suppression of media and all these things go. So if we think it's gonna be easy, we are wrong. Yeah, that's my take for now.
Thank you, Web. Jen, yes, no to candidate to process.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. Well, let me just start with the mockery that is the process. And well, just by merely being a mockery, I think I will say a big no to all the people who have been nominated. I will start with the the feedback that was given during the public participation, I think I have been able to see somewhere that there was over 800 responses that went through, of which 127 were actually affidavits that had been sworn against the respective appointments. The question is, why are we not first reviewing those before we can even go to a review by the parliament? What is this urgency that has to go through review by parliament before a call can be taken if these particular nominees actually meet the threshold or not? Why would we be having a circumstance whereby somebody is being evaluated by parliament, yet there is a back and forth between the DPP office, the EACC office? I mean, something is actually really off in terms of how we are running this country. This is a CS role. The CS roles need to be independent from the political class. We will not expect or get the performance of this country moving on to the next level or even being better if the very people who are the political class are the ones who are coming in as CS. They will not be able to steer this country to the next level. It's a mockery. It's a complete insult to the entire population of Kenya. And I think, and in no uncertain terms, we should reject completely this process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jane. Who is coming up next? Daktari Onyango.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much, Eric, for the opportunity, the co-host and all that who have spoken before me. I'm Dr. Duncan Onyango. I am a lecturer at the Technical University of Kenya. And for the process that we have seen, I think I vote no for the process. For the people who are appointed, no, it is no. Maybe I don't know about the young man who has been given water. Yeah, assuming that since I am not privy to how his name ended up there, let me just give him the benefit of doubt. Just because I am not privy to how his name got to the president. If somebody educates me or enlightens me on that matter, then I can be able to
As to
judge.
why he was
For
selected?
now, I don't want to judge him. How he was selected, how the president came to know the young man from to give him such an important docket as water. I don't know, but I'll give him the benefit of doubt. I will not judge him because I don't know. I don't know him. He has no history, and I don't know how he got there.
He has no history
But
in
for the
what?
rest,
Come on, Daktari.
He has no history in the public
I
domain.
don't.
He has a CV.
He has no history in the public domain. There's nothing we know about him. So we judge people. We judge Mbadi based on his record. We judge Oparanya based on his record. This young man, I don't know where he has come from. I don't know. We don't know anything is public in public service or in private. We are just getting to know him. So for me, I won't judge him. But for the rest of the team, it's a no, because what we saw was just a cosmetic exercise to rubber stamp the list that the president has sent to parliament. I think we will begin to get serious as a country the moment we will try to do what the Constitution of Kenya 2010 envisaged as for the cabinet, the cabinet of the Republic of Kenya. Uhuru tried to do it in his first term when he exposed, he allowed people to express interest in these positions. And we saw some new names that came from the corporate world, people we had never seen in politics. And they had opportunity to display their expertise. And out of that, we saw some good work, because people were, a few of them, although still he's pointed because he mixed them with politicians, but the few of them who came in without a political whatever, without having been tainted in politics, did fairly well
All
as
right,
compared to
Daktari.
the rest. We saw a lot of reforms in the education sector, because we had a person who was from the academic world, who was from an expert in public policy, and he did a lot in education. That we have to give it to him. But the same person, when you took him to the internal security, a place where he knew nothing. We saw how he fumbled with the security of this country and tainted his good record that he had in education. We saw characters like Ambassador Amina Mohammed in foreign affairs doing fairly well. She almost became the AUC chairman that Right Honorable Raila is now fighting for. But the same person taken to education where she knew hardly anything, we saw how she fumbled with a very important docket, the education sector of this country.
Yeah.
And that is why the education is in a mess today. But what does Ruto do? He still brings a politician to correct it.
Asante, Daktari. Asante. Let's end it there. Manwa, are you able to speak now? Or because after Manwa, then we'll go to Raymond. Let's try Manwa, whether your mic is working now. Unfortunately, Manwa, you're not able to get on. Raymond, go ahead. Raymond Matata.
Yes, thank you, Eric, and first, thank you for this opportunity. I would not want to judge a person depending on how eloquent they are during vetting. I believe at one time when we went for a job interview, we may not maybe have performed very well during the interview, but deep down in our hearts, we knew that we can do that job very well. So for me, I'll judge these candidates maybe after 1 or 2 years after we have seen their performance. Then that's when you can be able to judge how they have performed.
Can I ask a question? Sorry, I just want
Secondly, Eric,
just before you go on to the second point, you said that let's give them 2 years and then we can see how they can be judged. 10 out of the 22 who've been nominated have been in government before. You know how they've performed. Would you need to give them more time in order to do that?
maybe you can give an example. I believe that, for example, Professor Kindiki, I believe that he has done well in his docket.
Okay, so you don't need another 2 years to see what he can and cannot do.
I mean, for the new nominees, you can give them time for them to prove. So we cannot judge a person depending on how we just look them maybe at their face or maybe how they performed during the vetting or during the interview.
Okay, so for the
Secondly,
12 individuals, I'm sorry, I have to
I
go on to that. I have to go back to that one. For the 12 individuals who've not been in government
okay.
before, what you're saying is give them a chance. But the bone of contention here is the 10 individuals who have been in government before, namely as cabinet secretaries. Should they be given another opportunity based on their past? Or, like a lot of folks are saying, then not even be given another opportunity because they have been there before.
In my opinion, I have not seen any person who has underperformed to a level that they cannot be given this opportunity. Those who are nominated again, those who are there before, I've not seen so much a person who has underperformed to a level that they cannot be given another chance. Secondly, Eric, I've seen people so much criticize Oparanya. We all criticize until it's us, because I believe that a person is innocent until they've been proven guilty. Thirdly, the term gazettement, it means that to remove an official status from something by publishing the fact in an official gazette. I believe that the president did not fire the 22 cabinet secretaries. He just changed his mind. And that's what is me to the gazette, according to the English dictionary.
Okay.
So I believe that the president did not fire these cabinet. Again, I want to disagree with Dr. Onyango that we should not believe in people because we have not the public record. This young man who is 32 years old was been nominated. I believe from his CV, I believe he is going to do well, and we should give him benefit of doubt, and we should believe in young people we should not disapprove people because maybe you have not seen them in public, or maybe we have not heard them in scandals. Thank you, Eric.
Point made. Thank you very much, Raymond. C. Mukeni, let's hear from you. And then after C. Mukeni, we hear from Eunice Minor and then the real Joe.
Good evening. Thank you, Eric. I'm a HR specialist. I have been in human resources for many years. When you ask the question whether we think any of the candidates either fit the bill or don't fit the bill, I think the question first should be the other way around. Is the process, was the process good enough? Was it according to the Constitution? Because if the process, regardless of how good they were, then if the process is not, it doesn't fit the bill, it doesn't align with the Constitution, then the whole process is flawed. So let's first put that aside. The entire process was flawed. First, the president dismissed them. That is the word he used. And then he went ahead against the law, to then nominate them. So half of them already out. Now, let me tell you what my opinion is about the 22 who were so-called vetted. There is not one person, not one in the entire 22 that I even thought could even do 30% of what I, as a Kenyan, would expect of a cabinet secretary. So the entire 22 out, completely out. All right? So I want to keep it short. I have other comments, but I think many people have commented about, various things. I want to keep it very short and pass on my time to somebody else. Thank you.
Asante sana. Eunice?
Good evening. Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Now, mine is, it's actually similar to what the lady has just said. The process is fraud. How do you say you have vetted people and somebody says that my net worth is 2.3 billion and you don't even ask, how did you make the 2.3 billion? Which industries do you own in Kenya? We are in business. I am an entrepreneur. To get that kind of net worth, you really need to create a product, a service that people want to buy. Number two, I think the whole system, our system is completely rotten. And whether it is that young man who is 32 years old, whether it is us who are here, you get into that system as it is, will be corrupted. Why do I say this? Because we have a deeply ingrained culture of impunity. It has been developing over years. And I think we need a reset, a complete reset, whereby we begin from the beginning. It's not new laws. I'm not talking about making laws. We have very beautiful laws. We have a good constitution that Kibaki gave us, but we have complete disregard for the law, for the constitution, for each other, for people. Because when you take so much, and then some people are sleeping hungry, others do not even have toilets, it's insane, it is sick. I think we need a complete reset. And one of the way I think is, I don't know whether we need to shame the behaviors we don't want to see, and we should not relent, because this is a system we have encouraged, we have been working Kenyans. And Eric, you're in the media, please deplatform people we think are thieves. Don't give them a platform to speak to us, because we should shame them. Don't give them a platform unless they're coming to tell us, giving us a public lecture on how they made 2.3 billion, how many people they have employed, so that then we can see they're helping the nation. Even please deplatform these people.
Okay.
Let's go for reset. Yeah.
Thank you, Eunice. The real Joe. Joe, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Latif. Thank you very much for giving me the mic. First of all, my vote is no to the entire cabinet. That was the entire CS nominees that was being vetted. And I want to pose a very critical question right now. And this is the fundamental issue that we are all missing in this particular topic. And my question is our president incapacitated? And I'm going to answer my question because I feel like if you dismiss your cabinet on grounds of performance and reappoint them even to the same dockets, some of them, what is incapacitation? Our president has been unable to make constitutional decisions. What is incapacitation? Guys, we are being treated into, we are being made to discuss something that we are not even supposed to be discussing this process. We are supposed to be discussing how we got to this process. But how did you get to this process? A decision was made that was not effective. And therefore, I believe that the head is the problem. And in my own thinking, I feel like we only have two gaps. That is the gap. These two things are the reason why we have a very, very poor public service in our country. Number one, best interest. And number two, good will. If we get these two things right, I don't think we would even be having this conversation tonight. And therefore, I close by saying that we have a rotten head. And therefore, that is what we need to get rid of completely. Thank you very much, Eric.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you. Comments on online?
Okay, let's look at some more of these comments. Chris Barry says the exercise seemed like a circus with the speaker as the clown. We cannot fight corruption if we put in office politicians whose integrity is questionable. It is a sad state of affairs for our country. Mackenzie says politicians are recycling themselves. Professionalism was not considered, and that is sad. Ansma says, for starters, Ruto approached Raila to give him names to form broad-based government. This guy is from Odhiambo Raila pick. He is rewarding them for the previous work they've done for ODM. That's what it looks like. The Kikombe says, shouldn't CSs be the most outstanding in our midst? Joho, Kindiki, Mutua, Nyano are the smartest we have got. Weta answered half of the questions directed to Joho. Seems that they were feeling sorry for each other. That's essentially what he said. We are not just looking at CVs. All are learned. We don't use dictionaries here. We use the Constitution, and that should be period. Which Kenya is this dude living in? Some Kenyans want to live. Some others want to work. We need to be speaking from the heart. Of course, these continue many.
There are many.
Yeah, quite a lot. The ACC withdrew the case against Oparanya. It was just a case of witch hunt. Don't rush to conclude without a proper thought and some homework done.
Okay, so the conversation continues, and if you've just joined us, this is the People's Verdict, and the People's Verdict is on the cabinet nominees. They have been vetted. 20 of them have been vetted by Parliament. The parliamentary committee has retreated. They should be preparing a report to present to Parliament, and then the whole House will vote based on what the committee then presents. But we want the citizens also to have a voice in this entire process, because it's important that the citizens, the sovereign of this republic, participate from the very beginning to the very end. When the Constitution puts it that the president shall nominate and then Parliament will vet, and we know that the process of Parliament is going to have to include public participation, basically the Constitution is saying that the citizens of Kenya are the ones who are going to vet the cabinet secretaries. So tonight we're asking you to vote. This conversation is happening on X Spaces, on YouTube, and on Facebook as well. Go wherever you are, vote, and let's hear from you. Josephine, you have the mic now, and then we'll hear from Maura Roberts after you. Josephine, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you, Eric, and Kenya Commission of Human Rights and your co-host. I want to greet you, fellow Kenyans, wherever you are. both in Kenya and in the diaspora. Good evening. And my first take is the vetting of the cabinet secretaries all is not right and it's wrong. And why I am saying that, it's because of one thing. For us first and foremost to eradicate whatever is happening into our nation, we need to remove the rot in our minds that if Eric commits a crime and I don't like Eric, that Eric is wrong. And if Josephine commits the same crime which was committed by Eric, and Josephine, I like her, that is not a crime. And that is something I've even, when I've been listening keenly right now, I've just picked such things from some of the speakers as we are speaking. Now, if it's a crime no matter who commits it. And the moment we stand on that ground, we will be cleaning our country clean. Second, I don't even see any reason, for whatever reason, why we should recycle a person who is earlier taking pension, receiving his pension after retiring as a governor, and then is now reappointed again into office to continue drawing money from the public. Yet their net worth is so many billions of money or millions of money. Yet we have another citizen who is equally qualified and doesn't have anything. And we need them to be in office to run this country, and they can run better. One thing we need to tell ourselves the truth is, if you have not done, you have been in an office for 10 years, there's nothing you can continue changing in that particular office in other 10 years or other 5 years. And we need to come out clear and amend some of the Labor Relations Acts in our constitution, so that any person who is on retirement should not be appointed in any capacity to work as a civil servant unless he is appointed just to guide as a chair, to guide those in departments. And that's the only time we shall say at least we are moving. Otherwise, if we remain like this, then we will continue suffering. We will continue crying that there are no jobs, because the people whom we put on top there, they are not reasoning. They are just there because I was awarded to just go and continue looting and looting and looting day in, day out. And they are not willing to think. I can tell you the problem we have in our country is not our constitution, but it's people who are appointed in offices who do not want to think. And if you are under them and you try to reason out and tell them this can be make it better, they feel you are a threat, and then they kick you out of the office. And because you fear that, now you have to be submissive. No matter how much you know what can be done, you remain suppressed there because you have to retain your job. So, fellow Kenyans, if we can grow out of these issues, even the issue we are having for the cabinet secretaries wouldn't be an issue, because by merit, you just complain and that person leaves office automatic. The same thing applies to the president. By him declaring we have 247 dead youth, actually he has even never stood up to apologize to Kenyans for the killings. I know many of you here are lawyers. The truth is that a treason, the person who commits a treason offense, as treasonous offense, it's most probably the person who triggered the treason to happen, but not the victim of committing the treason, but whoever triggered it. And if you are the one who have triggered it, the president, if there's any treasoners have been committed in this country, he is the one who committed the treason. And he needs to rectify that, but he has never seen that. He has never seen the importance of that. So kindly, fellow Kenyans, we need to wake up and tell ourselves the truth. Because if we can sit down and watch over 247 people have been killed, and the president has not stood to apologize to Kenyans, he has not even bothered, then we need to tell ourselves, actually our constitution, the president is supposed to be a symbol of unity. He is no longer. He is only servicing his interest, and we need to come out as nation and tell him, pack and leave our office. We had given you a job to do. You are not able to do. You have proven to the citizens of Kenya incapable of delivering the services. Just leave our office. So thank you so much, fellow Kenyans. Let's wake up. and do
Thank
what is
you.
supposed to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Josephine. Maura Roberts.
Yes, thank you. You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, me, first of all, I won't say that I approve none. The whole was just like nothing but a drama. But for those asking whether the about integrity issues, the word integrity doesn't exist in Ruto's vocabulary. Everyone should know that. Secondly, the second thing I would like to say is that I hear people here praising Kidiki, the interior CS nominee, that he did a good job in this. Let's not forget that this is the person who was in charge of our interior security when over 200 people were gunned down. And no matter what good you have done, there's no good you can do in this world that can override the sanity of human life. So I was more than shocked when I saw that Ruto has nominated Kidiki back and given him the same docket that oversaw snipers gunning down our young children at Parliament building. I was really shocked. Finally, the last point I would say is this. I don't know how somebody can have 500, 700 millions, and yet he's going to apply, he's accepting a job whereby he's going to be paid a mere 1 million, 1 million Kenya shillings per month. If those people who have those millions, 500, 700, 1 billion, if they think they have made that money in a genuine manner, let them quit from exerting those positions. Let them come out and we fight it out in the entrepreneurship world, in the business world. There is nobody who has 700, 1 billion, 400 million in a genuine way that will accept a pay of a mere 1 million Kenya shillings a month. Hiyo ni uongo. Wakuje tungangane. But they are having that job so that they can root to even billions and billions of millions of things. Wakuja katika ulimwengu wa biashara tukutane huko, tungangane huko. Asante sana.
Maura, thank you. Are we criminalizing wealth? I mean, are we saying that if you actually are wealthy, you should not serve in the public service?
Well, I mean, that's
Because
what it sounds like. Off
why?
the cuff, but
Is that
I
fair?
think if we were to open it up and ask the question, does it mean that somebody who is not wealthy by nature then cannot serve in a
position in the public service?
In public service, and I think that it would be unfair to say that. To be honest, the question is that I think what has sparked this now is that we're looking at a situation whereby if somebody served in government and had 100 million shillings in terms of their net worth in 1 year, and you were still serving in government, and then you have double that 100 million, that's okay. The question is, how were you able to double that? What is it that you were doing? But our first inference is that there was some, putting your hand in the cookie jar here and there, and that's how you got the money.
You used the influence of your office.
No, but you must also understand that you're dealing with a very abused people. And when I say this, I mean it in that way, that people's minds have been abused, that there is pilfering of public resources on a regular basis. So your first reaction is to say that anybody who has grown their wealth by 100 million shillings in 12 calendar months, having sat in a public service position, was definitely stealing from public coffers. That is the first assumption.
So what should we do? What should the parliamentary committee have done? What should the candidates have done?
There should have been a back question.
Should be very clear that, you know what, my wealth grew, but it was clear and clean.
It should have been clear and clean in explanation as well, not just by saying that I had 100 chickens in August 2023.
Katega mayai.
This chicken laid this egg, I sold it for this amount and I made this
kind of hatched chicks.
Or it hatched chicks or whatever it did. And then we grew the chickens by another 50. And I think that we have to get granular because you're dealing again with the money that belongs to the people. That you have to get granular in that respect.
Is that not too personal though?
No,
I mean, it's your own personal wealth.
No, it isn't. Is it? But it's your personal wealth, but you sit in a public position. And that you must understand that everything about you was going to be hung to dry when you said, I want to take this position. That's one of the things that you accepted, whether you like it or not.
You've got to be ready to come out here and be naked.
Air your dirty, clean, mediocre, torn laundry in public. That's what you accepted. It's part of the job. You take it, you leave it. So at this point, you grew your wealth by 150 million shillings in 12 months. You best be willing to say where it came from. And if you've explained it to the satisfaction of everybody, then well and good. Carry on. You would not be the first rich or wealthy person in public service on the globe. There are many. But is it explained? Yes, it is. The question from the vetting committee should have been immediate. what is your wealth? In this it was here, in this it was here. Explain to us how you moved from here to here.
They did. They did.
Was it satisfactory?
Now that's a question.
Was it satisfactory?
Clearly to the MPs it was satisfactory. To the public it appears not.
Because
so
again,
what other questions should have
you're
followed?
dealing with the conscientiously abused people who history has taught them over and over again that somebody who sits in this position, and look at what we're talking about now, when a former governor who has allegedly pilfered 2 billion shillings can just walk away with a slap on the back. It stains everybody else, unfortunately, but it does.
Excuse me. Okay, more mics open. Let's hear from I had picked Vincent Opar and then Terian. And remember, the rule here is you begin by telling us yes, no to any of the candidates or yes, no to the process. Vincent Opar. Vincent is not ready. Terian, are you ready?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, so first to answer a question you've just asked right now, does it mean because you have wealth you cannot run for public office? I think it's not about wealth. First of all, it's about how was that wealth made, and is it actually, can you prove that that wealth was actually made the right way? The problem, okay, and first of all, I say no to all of them. None of them, the process, first of all, was also wrong. Everything about that process was just so wrong. It was more of the committee making it look like it's a joke. So the whole process just looked like a joke. So when you ask someone like Joho, you have 2 billion shillings. How was this money made? Where is proof that this 2 billion shillings was actually made from clean business, as he said? For someone who's come from Mombasa, that does not even add up. For us who know, especially when they were doing the whole Mombasa pavement, we know that business went to the family. So they can't say for real that business. So for me, I say no, and it's not about how was this wealth made. Yes.
I think there's
Can you hear me?
There's an issue with your connection. Yeah, we can hear you now. Let's try again.
Oh, sorry. I'm saying for me, it's not about the wealth, but was actually made the right way. So I say no to all of them. That's my submission.
Thank you, Terian. Hannah?
Hello, everyone can hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. First, I say no to the process. It was a process of mashakura, like we usually say. And we need to tame Wetangula, because Wetangula, he needs to be tamed. He's just thinking like he's the biggest man out there right now after the president. Maybe it's true, but he's supposed to serve the people. He's there because of the people. I think he has forgotten about that. When it comes to the KRA, they need to be present, especially to those people who are going to present themselves to serve the public. They have to be doing their auditing of these people every 2 years, two times per 5 years, so that we note what they have earned within those 2.5 years of their term. Otherwise, it's just a work of no utility of the KRA chasing around the Kenyans to give them money and to add the taxes onto Kenyans, while they do not even take care of what the people in the up there who are supposed to serve the Kenyans are earning and how they are earning the money. When it comes to those people who have been voted in, who have been audited, I think, I hear that people are saying about Kindiki. Seriously, Kindiki has killed more than 500 people. Let me say it and put it like that. Why? There are 50 people in, how many in that water thing? Those women, they were saying they are only women. that is still something which needs to be looked at. There is the problem with 250 right now in the mortuary. How? These are people who, if let's take it to outside world, when they see Kenyans being killed like that, and there is no accountability, then there you are taking your people out from Kenya to give them to this Arabic world. How are they going to be treated there if one American can be killed in Kenya and Kenya can be turned upside down? How come 500 people are die in Kenya and there's nothing to be done? Nobody has been taken in. It's stupidity out of utmost. Anyway, what is lacking in our politician is what we call the heart of Ubuntu-ness. They do not consider themselves as Kenyans, actually. They consider themselves as much superior being than the Kenyans themselves and the Kenyans they serve. They do not think they are serving Kenyans. They think the Kenyans should be serving them. That's why it's very easy for them to just take money to give 500 here to this person and then tell them, you do not go out on the 8 nane mutoke. It's your life on the line. These people did not care about you. That's the end of my whatever.
Thank you, Hannah. End of whatever. Okay. David Ludogoli. And if David is not ready, can we hear from Mzee_Aling? They're not ready. They're far from their gadgets. All right. I think let's come back to our panel and ask the question of public participation, right? Because just going by the decision of the Court of Appeal on the matter of Finance Act 2023 and the threshold of public participation, the expectation of the law and the constitution on public participation, the expectation based on just the values of governance in the country, was there adequate public participation through this vetting process, right? So there are people here who are questioning, so why did the president why did the president nominate, why did he do this and the other? The law does not expect him to consult, but it expects that when it goes to Parliament, then Parliament shall be involved. Who's this who's now coming with noise? David, you're out of order. So, was there a sufficient and adequate public participation? We want to hear from Martin Mavenjira, who's a senior policy program advisor at Kenya Human Rights Commission, and then Dr. Kawiva Wambua as well from Inuka Trust. Was there adequate public participation, and what's that threshold? Martin, if you're here, let's start with you.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Eric. So just in response to your question, I think when you look at the 2010 Constitution, it really sets a very high standard for public participation. And that is premised on the fact that the framers of our Constitution thought it important that members of the public or even citizens of Kenya should be consulted on matters that would directly or indirectly affect them. Now, when you look at the appointment of cabinet secretaries, these ideally are public officers who should be able to serve for the goodwill of all Kenyans. They should be able to advance, they should be able to advance good governance principles, the rule of law, the realization of a Bill of Rights, and that is why the Constitution sets a very high standard when it comes to matters public participation. And like you rightly mentioned, yes, the Supreme Court actually annulled, made a landmark decision last week. And part of the argument of this project was that there was no robust public participation. So back to this aspect of, the appointment of the vetting of the cabinet secretaries. In my honest opinion, Eric, there was no robust public participation. In fact, if you look at the high standard that the constitution sets on the government of the day, in as far as public participation is concerned, you would realize that there was no significant effort that was made to actually sensitize Kenyans robustly. That we actually reappointing a cabinet secretary, and that may explain why there was not a massive magnitude of submissions in as far as the appointment as concerns. But be as it may, the committee received a significant number of submissions challenging the suitability or the credibility of most of these nominees. And your guess is as good as mine, Eric. In the 28 or so days, I can assure you, this parliament here will not come out with anything tangible. In other words, they are going to just rubber stamp all these nominees. And the reason why I say that is, Eric, ladies and gentlemen, is because when you look at the different times that we have tried to test public participation in as far as appointments are concerned, in most of these instances, Parliament has actually either abdicated its duty to listen to these views, or has outrightly chose to willfully and negligently not consider these views. And I'll cite examples. When President Ruto nominated then IG Japhet Koome to serve as Inspector General of Police, which is a public office, the Kenya Human Rights Commission and a host of civil society organizations, including Kenyans, prepared a memorandum and submitted views to Parliament, clearly demystifying why he would not be a suitable candidate for that position. Parliament went back, retreated, they approved his nomination in total disregard to the key concerns raised. But let me just cite a few, if I may, Eric, just a few concerns that were raised. One, in the memorandum that we did together with the members of the Police Reform Working Group, we did clearly demonstrate how Mr. Japhet Koome was responsible for the deaths of many Kenyans in the period between January to March 2017. In that period, popularly known as the anti-IEBC demonstrations, there were numerous complaints. In fact, the Independent Policing Oversight Authority did come up with a robust report with broad recommendations, but you saw Parliament still approved it anyways. So when you look at the current crop of nominees who we have just, basically this whole sham process that we've witnessed, you realize that in that Gazette notice, and I encourage your listeners here, when this conversation is done, just please go and just Google that Gazette notice and look at the reasoning on the first two. The keywords are mindful, acknowledging, cognizant, recognizing, committed, conscious, and then when you go to the next page, it talks about what? Dismissal. Right now, when you look at our constitution, the framers of the constitution did not envisage a situation whereby if you're dismissed, you'll be reappointed. However, the constitution is critically clear that there are grounds on which it sets a high ground for public officers, on how they should serve in these specific offices. Now, for the 10 that have been reappointed, you'd realize, technically they should not have been appointed because of the 22 that have been appointed, there were serious grounds on which they had been dismissed. Now, I'm happy to inform the audience that as of today, as we speak, there are about 12 human rights activists and Kenyans of goodwill who have actually filed a petition challenging the appointment of about 4 or 5 of these nominees. And I'm certain, actually, the proper framing of the petition should be even bordering around the reappointment of some of these 10, because you could clearly see from this entire process, we're just being taken around in circles. It's a sham. It's a waste of the trust that it's actually an abuse to most Kenyans who have actually willfully voted for some members of parliament who have been appointed, who have formed this committee, and now they have actually abdicated their duty to the Kenyans who elected them. Remember, members
Martin.
of parliament
So then
have.
the question comes in here, Martin, and it has been asked before:
Yes.
is there recourse for the very many people who have contributed tonight, and many who also are posting their comments here on the X Spaces, on Facebook, on YouTube, and they're saying that they felt that the process was not as it should have been? What's the
Yes.
recourse?
Thanks, Eric. There is actually a recourse, and I encourage Kenyans from all walks of life to actually challenge the appointment of these suspicious characters in our courts of law. On many instances, our judiciary, or should I say our courts of law, have come in to vindicate us on some of these, strange, or should I say repugnant, or policies or positions or processes by government. And I'll just cite an example. We all remember here when we started the BBI journey that sought to actually amend 78 provisions within the Constitution of Kenya. We all know, or some of us may not know, that to amend a key constitutional provision, you need robust public participation. You actually need to have a referendum. So the long and short of it was, Eric, colleagues, is that we all saw that the Supreme Court actually vindicated Kenyans and sided with what many Kenyans wanted for. So, in as much as Parliament may abdicate their duty, which is quite unfortunate, because remember, members of Parliament have a social contract with Kenyans. They are voted to serve for and on behalf of Kenyans. They are not a gift to Kenyans, because Kenyans actually exercise their constitutional right to vote them, to lead them for a certain period of time. There are actually two recourses for Kenyans. The first one is the courts of law. The second one is, come 2027, I encourage all Kenyans to reflect on the performance of their members of parliament and decide whether they want to still have them, serve them after 2027 or not. And that also applies to, by extension, to the head of state. I'll leave it at that, Eric.
When we look at representatives, members of parliament who essentially stand for the people, because that is how your representation is voiced, Martin. And I also look at a court of law whereby something called cross-examination happens, and you can come back and ask particular questions. Would the way to be fully think about recalling a member of parliament if this individual does not represent you in the way in which you would hope?
I think yes, colleagues. Kenyans should actually should be able to recall their member of parliament. I think about a month or so ago, there was a very progressive decision from our courts of law. Initially, recalling a member of parliament, as was stated by the framers of our constitution, had to be after somebody had done, I think, at least minimum of 2 years. But there is a very progressive decision that was issued by our courts of law that has actually made it simple to recall your member of parliament. So, and there have been several virtual conversations around this. So, it is a starting point for Kenyans to actually, to really think this social contract, because as is with any contract, contract cannot, if there is a breach within a contractual provision, then that contract should not be, that contract should not be, it should not last, and it should not last the whole hog, because we all know that members of parliament are supposed to serve us for 5 years. However, if they breach that social contract that they have with us, then ideally, courts from the reasoning on the judgment is that it should be able to actually it should be made easier for your constituents to recall a member of parliament. So there is precedent on that. And the only stumbling block that we have right now, Eric, which is actually a creature that has been created by our members of parliament, and also by extension the executive, is we don't have commissioners for the independent electoral and boundaries commissions. So as things stand right now, in as much as you would require IEBC to recall your member of parliament, you still need them, a fully constituted IEBC, to actually elect to conduct a by-election of some sort. So we are actually in this precarious position because, again, Parliament seems to be acting as an extension of the executive, and yet, the constitution creates three arms of government: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, which should all exercise their mandates independently. But unfortunately, that has not been the case. In fact, the judiciary, I must say, has done their bit in trying to exercise their mandate. But unfortunately, members of parliament have abdicated their duty to their citizens, and by doing that, they have breached the social contract that we have.
Okay. Before Dr. Kawiva Wambua comes in, let me read a couple of comments. Wayua Muli says the easiest way for Kenya to resolve herself is to recall all MPs and start from scratch. We need a functional IEBC for that. So could we get ahead with that? I've seen Professor Kivuta Kibwana has, put in a couple of comments here. First of all, just telling us what happens when you get into public service. All public and state officers, particularly state officers, you declare your wealth, and is what you submit. I'm going to get that comment shortly. But also the other one that Professor Kivuta Kibwana had posed there was a question, troubling question. Many of the nominees were stating that what they would do if approved without recourse to basing such on the manifesto of the parties in government and without recourse to existing government policies. Are they anticipating the change of manifestos and policies? But each one of them was just giving their opinion. I think what we need to do is this and the other. But yeah, are they coming to continue implementing the Kenya Kwanza Manifesto? And what does the Kenya Kwanza Manifesto say about what they're doing? Right? So that asks that question. Yeah. So hold on a minute. What exactly was going on here? I'll get the other question by the other comment by Professor Kivuta Kibwana as we continue. Kawive, come in, Dr. Kawive Wambua from Inuka Trust.
Yes.
It is again just that basic question of the public. Many are feeling that this process is a sham. It is not representative. What should have happened to make people feel confident with this process? What is it? What are the key ingredients that they're saying it's lacking?
Eric, thank you very much for that question. And the first issue we need to deal with as a country, and looking at the question of public participation, is there a framework set out from the principles in the Constitution, a framework, an administrative framework of ensuring that public participation meets both the threshold and the requirement of the law? In Parliament, no, it is not there. Are there guidelines for government ministries and departments to carry out public participation and a law passed to the same effect? No, it is not there. The law that was proposed by, I think it was Amos Wako in 2019, is still a draft. It has never been passed because the idias, I want to call it idias argument by Parliament and by other institutions is that public participation is expensive. And therefore we are in this country where, in my view, there has been no sufficient or effective public participation on this issue. And if this nomination or vetting, I don't know whether it was vetting or passing process, is taken to court, it cannot survive. So basically, what the law anticipates as the threshold for public participation, where a majority of the people are reached in the first place, this committee or this parliament just require people to write memoranda, and as such, therefore, a great majority of Kenyans that are not able to write memoranda or that are not able to access offices of lawyers. I know there are lawyers who did pro bono services in terms of swearing affidavits for Kenyans who are giving memoranda were there. But the access of that service, even if it was pro bono, was limited. It's the requirement by government, by the parliament, therefore, and therefore its committee, that they should have developed customized and implemented a framework where every Kenyan has got an equal opportunity to present a memorandum or to present their views on the candidates that were being presented. What is the time frame, for instance, that was given for doing this? We need to ask ourselves: was it sufficient for everybody to be able to do that? What was the infrastructure in place for that to happen? And therefore, the actual answer to the question whether there was public participation, sufficient public participation, is no. But let's also be realistic that our government or the people in power expect public participation to be when you attend a rally and then you listen to them speaking. Now you have participated effectively. That kind of shenanigans needs to stop. We have three fundamental issues in the constitution that we need to deal with respect to how this process has gone. The number one for me, and it relates directly to public participation, is the provision of Article 99(3). And this has to do with the election of members of parliament. And I'm citing it because it may seem off, but let me bring the historical perspective that the question of qualification for election for a member of parliament is critical. And in 99(3), this particular section was introduced by Parliament in the course of when we were passing this constitution in 2010. And it basically says that a person is not disqualified unless the possibility of appeal or review of the relevant sentence or decision has been exhausted. That's the one that is usually correct. This was for qualification for election as members of parliament. We go to the question of recall, Article 104(2). It says that Parliament shall enact legislation to provide on the grounds for which a member may be recalled. There has been a present, and Virginia has mentioned it, there's been a current ruling, and therefore jurisprudence on this question. What basically we need to know is that Parliament and parliamentarians, and to a great extent the government, have sort of captured the legal and political space of this country, and therefore leave us with options of fighting all the time. I can tell you, Latif, for sure that the people or the young Gen Zs who were saying they will occupy parliament, their logic was very simple when I listened to them. It was very simple. These parliamentarians are not serving us, and we have no way of removing them because they have made a law to say that it is only them who can make the law, and then they make a law which says they cannot be removed. Basically, because 2.5 years, 1 year, and 60%, that was their logic. And it is the thing that is tiring Kenyans. Look at the question of people who have been nominated and have been making millions in parliament, in office. If you read Article 77(1) of the Constitution, it says, a person, a state officer, a public officer, shall not be engaged in any other gainful employment, whether it is business or not, for one simple reason: conflict of interest. Because you can actually repurpose public office, public goods and services for your own enrichment. That's why it was put there. And therefore, unless we are able as a country to say, to be courageous and say, therefore, that we need to separate the service of public from the service of self, from self-enrichment, from public interest, self-interest. So then that the people who are serving in this office are not conflicted ab initio. Then we will end up in the same process. This now, I said earlier, and I want to repeat for emphasis that the president was wrong to do what he did in nominating these characters, especially the ones that were recycled. Okay. But Parliament should not have entertained the president if there was a Parliament. But now clearly, right now, it is obvious that Parliament does not exist to serve or to function in the role that it is supposed to. And therefore, when this committee presents this report to Parliament, I can bet you, and Eric, I want to come and collect this bet, that they will pass it. They'll pass it. They'll pass the list like that, maybe with 1 or 2 sacrificial lambs, but they'll pass it as it is. So what will we end up with? Another reason for us to continue fighting. So we continue fighting the system, waking up, getting annoyed, waking up, everybody getting mental health issues, social, psychological torture, while these guys are laughing and eating and stealing our money. I mean, it has to stop. It has to stop at some point. We cannot go on, being treated like to a puppet show. We are being treated to a puppet show and it's like everybody's asking mtadu. That mtadu attitude is what is going to mobilize us, all of us as Kenyans, to say enough is enough.
Dr.
We have
Kariuki.
either to, like the other person said earlier, before you cut me, before the other person said there, Kenya ifungwe kila mtu aende nyumbani. Sasa nyumbani itakuwa ni wapi? That's the question that we need to reflect on. But we have when you are faced with an fait accompli, either you do, or even if you don't do, then it is done. I mean, it's done, and so whether there was public participation or not, it is still useless. It is a very bad situation that we find ourselves in as a country.
Thank you, Kariuki. So let's go to another round of direct voting. So this one is just yes, no, why. Yes, no, why, and we make it a minute. So we just finish this conversation in about 20 minutes or so. I want to give the mic first to the Kikombe, and then we come to Phyllis, and then we'll pick more speakers as we go. The Kikombe, are you there? Not there. Phyllis?
For me, I will. My problem is with the
Eric,
process.
can you hear me?
Though we.
Yeah,
Can
Kikombe,
you
hold
hear
on.
me?
Go ahead, Phyllis.
Hello.
Can you hear
Hi.
me?
The Kikombe, you are time barred, so you wait first.
My problem is with the
Eric, can you hear?
Phyllis, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. The problem is with the process, and I think we can whine the whole night. But I think the question would be, as a professional, I'm an HR professional, is we go back to the Constitution to look at the process and ensure, because the minute the president is given appointing powers, I don't think most of us can do anything about conflict of interest, etc. If you look at the vetting process, these people have been working together all these years. These people have been collaborating. And what did we really expect from that process? These people go to family parties, weddings, etc. This is a family. So what did we really expect as Kenyans? So I think we need to relook at the process. How independent should it be? What powers should the president have as an appointing authority? Should the president be left solely to just appoint one nominee, take him for vetting? Should the president also be the only one to appoint? For example, look at the independent institutions. Why are they not independent? So we need to think deeper than this.
Thank you, Phyllis.
And as Kenyans, ask ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Wakili. Jamanyata Wakili.
Hi, good evening, Eric, and good evening, everyone. Allow me to say this. The problem is not on the nominees.
The problem we're dealing with is the person or the body nominating. And unfortunately, as a country, we have not gotten. The last we had the president take control of the people he can nominate to cabinet was, I think, 20 years ago, or before the the new constitution. Because ever since, it has always been either referral or people with vested interest fronting names to be nominated to cabinet. A case in point, and I don't know why most of your panelists are fearing to mention, we know so well that there are individuals who are behind the nomination of the nominated health CS, and it is being pointed that the Speaker of Parliament, Wetangula, is behind it. In regards to nomination of the education CS, where the deputy governor candidate of Machogu was nominated, it is clearly evident that there was interest. There is no way you can replace me with the deputy candidate in an election, or you can replace me with my wife or my brother. That clearly there is vested interest. I heard somebody ask about the young guy, the 32-year-old Eric Muga. It is evident. It is what does it that he was fronted by the husband to the governor of Nakuru County, who was one of the people who fundraised, funded the UDA campaigns. So as I say this, as I conclude, allow me to say the problem we have is that the president is held hostage, and the people he's nominated, with the help of the ODM battalion, are just going to either loot or to hold stake for other entities and other individuals who may be pulling ropes from the background. So, as I reject all of them, I also want to request that we come out on 8th Naninane and remove the president from office. Thank you. Is anyone speaking? I can't hear anyone.
Eric Nduko, Wakili has finished.
At some point, I lost Eric as well. I thought there was a problem.
There's a problem. Okay, so here we go. So we'll say Alfred Karaoke, come in.
Good evening, Eric and Drew. Thank you so much for this opportunity. The first thing I'd like to say is that I completely disagree with the process, simply because this whole process is being micromanaged, I believe, from the presidency. And we're dealing with a very duplicitous individual of very low moral integrity. Listening to what's her name, Gladys Boss Cholet, coming out, and her tone that EACC has got absolutely no right to clear candidates, which she is, and she is right in law. That purview falls directly with Parliament. I think Gen Z who went out to the streets were looking for a very high bar for the people in government, the state officers. And right now, this guy has recycled probably half of his previous cabinet. And I think he should have been brave enough to take the opportunity for a clean slate. There's a wider pool of Kenyans. You're looking at very key ministries that have been handed to people who I don't believe deserve those dockets. Mining and blue economy, industrialization and trade, agriculture, those in the right hands, with the right ministers and the right permanent secretaries, can formulate policies that can drive this country to increase the inclusivity of people into the job market, into value addition, into business opportunities, and thereafter widen the tax base. You've got, just look at the list of permanent secretaries and just ask yourselves if that is actually the face of Kenya. And those are the same people who can definitely frustrate very good cabinet secretaries from implementing the manifesto and basically, uh, you know, make the whole thing fail. So right now, I do believe instead of us crying over what is currently going on, in my opinion, I do believe that we should be pushing towards the reconstitution of IEBC. We should be pushing Kithure Kindiki because we know he's all getting in. We all know that he's getting in to stop the gerrymandering with the suppression of releasing the IDs for people who have actually gone and applied for them. And from there, we can push on to recall MPs, or if worst came to worst, let's wait for 2027 and drain the swamp. I think the current president is currently brimming with a bit of confidence because he's got now Raila Odinga's people on board in the government. And it's extremely disappointing that, Raila has now turned out to be an individual who's just riots for a living and for his personal gain. And that's just my honest opinion. And frankly, I feel insulted at him even attempting to call for another Bomas when he had an opportunity to move this thing from a presidential system to a parliamentary system. But yet again, we look at the parliamentarians that we have: Oscar Sudi, Alice Nganga, people like Kururia of Gatondo North, Esther Passaris. I mean, really, we ought to be, let this just be a lesson, a very painful lesson as to who we put into office next time. I yield the floor and have a good evening.
Thank you, Alfred. The Kikombe.
I'm here, Eric. Can you hear me this time?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, finally. Thank you. So, Eric, I appreciate this moment, and I appreciate the platform. So, thank you for holding this conversation. I'm an ardent listener, and I appreciate both of you. You and Do, thank you so much. Now, I think we will all agree that the Gen Z has been the generation that has been able to tell the lion that its breath stinks, and it stinks. And Parliament should be the body that tells us and tells the lion that you need to brush your teeth. So then they freshen this breath. However, Parliament is playing to the game of avoiding the idea of accountability, because we all seem to discuss here and we forget that the reason why people are out in the streets is because Parliament refused to listen to the public body, the public voice, the voice that said that the finance bill is a mess, because they passed this bill. And then when the president was refused to sign the bill, they were behind him clapping. And then this is the same Parliament that is going to vet these CSs that are meant to go and help shape the future of our country. So I think we need to also be very, very aware of that. In my opinion, I think by the mere fact of vetting, before the parliamentary vetting committee makes it public that CSs should come and be vetted in public, they should be able to say, okay, so this is somebody that does not have any skeletons in their closet. So if they have any minimal skeletons, if they have any cases, even if they are pending, even if they are past cases, in my opinion, they should not be considered. And the parliamentary vetting committee should be able to tell us straight up from the public, like, Wetangula wanafatuambie mapema mapema, this guy, Joho, did not make it because we have a case. Oparanya did not make it because we have a case in the EACC. And then we will save ourselves a lot of time. We sat there for 2 hours listening to them, asking them very simple questions. And I think that is very unfair. So if you ask me, out of the 10 returnees coming, I would say absolutely no. One, they were fired. And if you're fired, it means you're fired because you did not satisfy the needs of your employer. So there's absolutely no need of gambling national wealth, national future to establish you, to move you to a different docket to go
And
and
the other
mess it
10?
up again. Good question. So the other 10, and I think this is a good question that you ask, Eric. So for example, people are excited here about John Mbadi, who's appointed on the Treasury. And I want to say that, listen, John Mbadi is an intelligent person. However, he speaks to the intelligent that people want to hear, the common person wants to hear. However, young people want to see people be put in prison. And this is one of the things that he never put in. He didn't make it clear. Eurobond ilikuwa $2 billion. I don't know if anybody understands that $2 billion means you, Buddha, if you're given $1 billion, it means you're spending $30,000 every day, every single day, for 200 years. There's no day you will decide it's 29,999.
Mm.
So nobody heard anything about putting those people to account. We all heard about these things about Treasury and going and reducing all these oil tax and
Okay.
motor vehicle dependency tax. So I think these are things that we need to actually focus. And people usually say that when you see there's a lot of chaos, focus on the money. That is
Thank
where the
you.
truth is hidden. The money is where the truth is hidden. So if you ask me, Eric, I would say most of them no. Apart from the gentleman that was coming in for water, I forget his name, Eric Muga.
Eric Muga.
Most of them seemed to understand what they were saying, but they spoke to what the public wanted to hear. But I wanted
Okay.
to hear that there is
Let's end
going
it
to
there
be
then.
accountability, and that is why people are out in the streets, and that's why people will be out in the streets in 2 days. People are out in the streets because of accountability, not because of what we will do in the future, but because of all the money that we will be paying back. We are paying debt that was taken, and we'll be paying. I'm paying debt for my kids, and they haven't
Let's
even
end it
been
there,
born
Kombe.
yet.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I appreciate this. Thank you so much. There's
Asante.
absolutely no reason for you to make millions, 100 million,
Thank you,
or
Kikombe.
Christian
Thank you. Thank you.
position. Yeah.
Lameko Gode.
Hey Eric, thank you for that. So I do share some sentiments with a number of speakers who just spoke. However, I think when having conversations within these parameters, we have to be radically, or we have to exercise radical honesty. And therefore, mine is not necessarily to approve or disapprove of the cabinet secretaries. I think the Constitution and the legislation allows for the parameters on that. I think mine is to say that if we are going to shift this country towards a different direction, we can talk about overhauling the entire system. But if we're to be radically honest, a number of people here are, a number of people out there, or even here on Twitter Spaces, are beneficiaries of corruption. How many people can stand and say that they don't know a friend of a friend, or a family, or a friend of a family who got them a bursary somewhere, who got them a job somewhere? So we have a cultural issue, a mindset of corruption entirely. If you calculate 1 million Kenyans in a day giving out 100 shillings to police officers, that is 100 million Kenyan shillings that's going to corruption. So, in order for us to end the entire process or the entire system, it also starts by citizens of Kenya refusing to bribe police officers, refusing to buy people in Nyayo House when you're getting a passport. Those are things that we have to really look at, because if we start looking at just the CSs nominated based on their qualifications or not, I mean, America, the UK, a lot of countries have political appointments as such. They have corruptions as well. We have a service delivery issue, and I can tell you right now, if Kenyans were getting their service delivery, they wouldn't mind so much about who's being appointed. If I could go and apply for a passport and get it within 2 weeks without having to toa kitu kidogo, I mean, I would be satisfied as a Kenyan, because there's many CEOs and many presidents out there in the world who don't have PhDs or masters or all this education, but they're doing a good job. But if we come and look at our systems, we elect people, we allow things to happen. 2007, lights were switched off during the announcement of the presidential election. In 2017, the Supreme Court nullified the election. We still went back with the same issues in the system at IEBC. We all saw what happened in 2022 as well, with a lot of issues, murky issues around the election. I mean, so I'd like us to also have that radical honesty to say that as Kenyans, we've also participated in this corruption, and we keep on perpetuating it by keeping on the bribes and having that and waiting for our friends and our families to be elected so we can be benefactors. Because if anybody here was to stand up and say, if everybody was here to stand up and to say that I've gotten a job at this corporate or I've gotten a job at this government post without knowing somebody, then I can start having that conversation of disapproving or approving. Other than that, mine is to say that as a culture, as a country, we all need to also have that radical honesty of stopping these things in our daily lives, so our children cannot look at corruption, cannot look at you bribing a cop or bribing your way into Nyayo House and think it's okay. We have made it feel
Point made.
okay even in our daily lives. So that's just my 2
Point
cents.
made. Thank you, Lamek. We come to the round of closure, so let's pick just the final votes here. You can continue voting. We are running a poll on X. Just keep going there. You'll find an entire thread with all the 20 nominees, and you can put in your vote, yes or no, on against each of them. Sheikh Afriq, and then we hear from Jerry, and then we come to a round of closure. Sheikh Afriq, go.
Oh, hi, everybody, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to contribute. Mine is I speak as a person who has lost confidence in the government, and because of that, I don't see how I can approve or disapprove any process moving forward. When President Ruto said he was going to do some soul searching, I had a bit of hope because I thought maybe he was going to sit down and, just, rethink how he's going to do things better. And then when he came up with the names, renominating people who he had fired, and then gave us a window, a 1 week window when we didn't know who else was going to be nominated. And then he brought in the ODM guys. That's when, my confidence even went even lower. And then looking at the process of vetting, I find it to be very casual, laughing, the speaker, throwing in an answer here and there, commenting about each other's, wealth, in a very casual way, even how they're dressed and all that kind of thing. It really didn't give me any hope that anything good was going to come out of it. And then when they started talking about their wealth, I did expect them to say, you know what, I've made 100 million in the last 1 year. And because of the current economic situation in the country, I've actually employed 20 young people in the last 2 years because, I'm doing business. I'm investing in all these places. I'm making all this money. And, I'm creating employment, out there as I make all these millions. So, or maybe just talk about, their, their charity work. Probably they're, doing some work in the local communities as they make all these millions. So they came up as people who are just out there to create their own wealth and they want to accumulate more. And then also they did not come out clearly to say what difference they're going to make, especially the ones who were reappointed, what difference they're going to make in terms of how they do things, and even put a bit of reflection on, how things didn't go well in their last, appointment and how they're going to change things moving forward. So I think what we can do as a citizenry is just to become more proactive in our, you know, in the way we check government. Probably this Occupy movement should become a bit more activated so
Okay.
that, yeah, sorry about that.
Thanks.
Anyway,
Thank you.
I'll end it there. Yeah,
Thank you. Jerry.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate that I have a chance to speak. Now, I appreciate the earlier speakers. I want to say this. I just listened to one of the speakers saying that each one of us somewhere has compromised. But I want to say here without fear of contradiction, I have worked with TSC for many years. I believed I was hired because I was qualified. And I somewhere rose to some level. But I want to say that I worked with a school principal in Kirinyaga County who never compromised, whose board meetings were conducted according to the Basic Education Act. Now, what am I trying to say? That the bulk stops at the presidency. All of us here can remember Kibaki, I think first time also, where even Kenyans who are arresting would go to the road and arrest corrupt police officers because the culture was changing. So the bulk stops at the presidency. This vetting in parliament is a waste of our time. We don't need it. It is high-class nonsense by Wetangula and team. So what we need to do here, I listen and I think a lot of us are from the earlier generation, Gen X and all that. And we are playing like we are on the side. Like let the Gen Z do their thing. No, this is our fight. So because I have the opportunity to come here and to speak, I am urging all of us, August 8, Nane, let us come out and join them and fight like the Matibas did. They were not young, but they fought for this nation. The bulk stops as the presidency, and we need this presidency gone. Thank you so
Jerry.
much.
Asante sana. Comments on our YouTube stream as well. Mama Aden says, many have seemingly resigned themselves to the belief that our constitution is the epitome of excellence, forgetting that it's merely a document. Its true strength lies in the integrity and dedication of those entrusted with its stewardship. When those in power lack fidelity, disregard their responsibilities, and perpetuate systemic corruption, even within institutions designed for oversight, how can we expect these nominees to genuinely represent the change that we so desperately need? The truly disheartening part of this narrative is that Kenyans have lost faith in every level of governance. The judiciary, now in the glaring spotlight, is inundated with petitions from citizens desperate for justice. It is telling that there is even a petition challenging the very fitness of William Ruto to remain as president. Consider this a dire warning. The window of opportunity for meaningful change is rapidly closing. Without decisive and courageous action from our leaders, heeding the anguished cries of the Gen Z and the struggling voices from villages across Kenya, our nation is on a collision course with disaster. This is not a speculative threat, but an imminent reality. If we fail to act now, the consequences will be catastrophic.
That adding to quite a number of comments that we had this morning, rather this evening, and looking into what it could potentially portend for the future. Even as we come to the end of this space tonight, we're going to get a wrap up in terms of thoughts and insights. Brian Wabala with us with giving comments in the very beginning and insights. We'd like to see how we can tie this all together with your comments, Brian.
Brian, can you hear us? I think he's having a challenge.
Hi, Eric.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, Eric.
Go ahead.
Sorry, come again with the question.
So here we're coming to an end of this conversation and just looking for a wrap up and insights from you in terms of what your thoughts are and where we are going forward what is potentially going to happen in the next couple of days, what will happen when, the parliamentary committee comes back from its retreat, and what to look forward to and what to continue pressing for in terms of accountability.
Okay. Thank you very much, Eric and Du. My takeaway from this conversation is that indeed it has been a waste of public resources for Parliament to have conducted such a kind of the vetting process. As to where this is, had reserved some comments on public participation. So it's definitely clear from what everyone said and the key speakers regarding the failure of this fundamental principle in the Constitution being adhered to, respected. And I think, as one of the senior lawyers once said, I think before the nomination of the CS candidates, when he said that if he doesn't get it right, then he's the problem. So we've all confirmed where the problem is, and as to whether there is going to be any change, I'm afraid that we may not experience any. And all I can say is that let's prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Thank you very much for those insights, Brian. It's been an interesting evening to be able to hear insights from around and to hear what the people's verdict actually is when it comes to a fundamental role that cabinet secretaries will play in government, especially at a crucial time in the country where the economy has been going through the ringers, many things not happening in the way in which they should. The nation basically on its toes and saying, we're demanding accountability, we're demanding proper management of government. The next couple of days will be very interesting.
Indeed. From what you've heard this evening, what do you make? What is the verdict?
Well, I mean, it sounds as though, there's a resounding no.
To what?
To the individuals that we see that have been nominated and at this point vetted almost in entirety for these positions. I mean, to be a critic of, I've always said that we see these vetting exercises as almost window dressing. I'm sure that the vetting process has been completed in the sense that the individuals who've been nominated will be given the go-ahead. I see this already. I don't think it will be met with open arms by very many a Kenyan, and it'll take a lot of people back to the drawing board in terms of what needs to be done to ensure that government is accountable.
Can I just throw, cat among the pigeons?
Sure.
Do you think this whole conversation, this rejection, this, pushback and saying, no, it wasn't a good process, they shouldn't have been nominated, Parliament is not a good thing. Do you think these are very elitist? Do you think it's actually confined to an elite group of Kenyans? And that the vast majority, the masses, actually are fine with what's happening?
I don't think so. I think we're getting to a point. You've heard me ask a question on very many occasions. What will be the straw that breaks the camel's back? And when it comes down to the wire, what is happening in your home? And can you draw a line between what is happening in your home and the person who sits in a position of government? And I think finally people are able to see that connection. And so there are folks who previously would have made a blanket statement or a blanket judgment. I don't think that's happening anymore. I do think at some level it is elitist, but I think for the majority of people who say no to a particular thing have now a fundamental understanding of what government is actually supposed to do. In order for you to have citizen-centric participation in government, there must be a fundamental understanding, and I think that we're getting to the point where that is actually happening. In Kenya, at least.
To the very many thousands of people who've joined this conversation from the country, from the diaspora, on X Spaces, on YouTube, on Facebook, we want to thank you very much. The conversations continue. We'll host another X Space on Wednesday. This is after the report has been presented to Parliament. After we see the response from all members of Parliament, we'll host another one where the Kenyan people will then again speak to the issues. Asanteni sana. Do have yourselves a lovely time. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Stu. Thanks, colleagues.